So let's start with the first topic. The first topic is academic advising for refugee students. I would like to give you a short overview also over what we at TU Berlin do, what our background is, and like who we are and how we work. So that would be the more general part for the beginning. I would like to give you some ideas about how we work with refugees, what our experience are, and also, like in the IncluStem project, we try to develop kind of common standards or guidelines for working with refugees. And I would like to present to you what our ideas are so far. And we can, of course, discuss that at the end. And finally, I would also like to illustrate a bit what we do in also presenting some stories like of people whom we've been in touch with during the last couple of years. So let's start with TU Berlin, because I think there are the audience is kind of mixed. So I saw in the registrations that we have a lot of people joining from Spain, also some persons from TU Berlin. For them, it might not be, the first part might not be that interesting, but I think it's relevant also to have an idea who we are and what we do. So let me just really very briefly introduce Technische Universität Berlin to you. So as the name already tells, we are a technical university in Berlin. There are basically 4 universities in the city of Berlin, the Free University and the Humboldt University. They do have a stronger focus on humanities and on the natural sciences. And we, Technische Universität Berlin, have a focus on engineering and on natural sciences, which is maybe one of the reasons why many refugees also during the last couple of years have been interested in studying at our institution. And then there's the University of Fine Arts also in Berlin. So we, the technical university, we have more than 35,000 students at the moment. So we are a rather big institution, and we are organized in 7 faculties. Just to give you an idea what the spectrum of what we offer and what the subjects we offer are. So as a technical university, of course, our focus is on engineering and on natural sciences, but we also offer humanities and educational sciences, which is faculty 1. We have mathematics and natural sciences, process science, biotechnology, for instance, is a process science, electrical engineering and computer science, mechanical engineering and transport system. And then there's the faculty of planning, building, environment. That means civil engineering, architecture, and related fields can be found there. And economics and management. That's the spectrum of what we offer. We are a rather international university. Roughly 29% of our students come from abroad. That means, or are international students. And that context international means they don't have a German passport, which of course could mean that people have German high school diplomas. So it's a rather diverse group, of course, but 29% is a rather high proportion for a German university. On the other hand, we have more than 300 cooperations with universities all over the world. There are 150 nationalities represented on our campus, and I just wanted to give you a brief overview what the countries of origin are. So on the first 3 places, there's China, Turkey, and India. On the 4th place, it's Syria already. So as you might know, in Germany, we had a lot of refugees coming from Syria from 2015. Then there's Iran and also Ukraine now. So there is quite a number of persons who might have a refugee background. We can't really tell how many refugee students we have because we don't count them. Of course, we don't ask people about their resident status when they enroll. But if you count together all countries, all, let's say, relevant countries, we can say that roughly 10% of our international students have a refugee-like background. Of course, well, what does refugee mean? I mean, you could, if you come from Syria and you have a student visa, you might not count as a refugee, but maybe still you are in a refugee-like situation. Also, on the other hand, many people who came from Syria now have the German citizenship, so it's really hard to tell how many there are. But yeah, I think 10% of the international students, which is roughly 900 to 1,000 students at TU Berlin, is quite a number, of course. Okay, so that as a very, very short introduction, just to give you an idea who we as Technische Universität Berlin are. And now I would like to talk, of course, more about the refugee topic and about academic advising and why this is relevant in that context. First of all, who are we? We are the academic advising service. Like all people who will talk today are employed in the academic advising service of TU Berlin. We are part of the student services department, which is basically, well, in the administration. This is our department, and we offer academic advising, psychological counseling, also service or support for students with disabilities and chronic illnesses, and many more things. So these are the three fields which are relevant today. And so how does it, or why is it that we work with refugees a lot? It's because, well, this is where we come from. Of course, as the academic advising service, we are kind of the first contact office for people who are interested in studying at TU Berlin. And we really started to think about what can we offer for refugee students back in 2015, 2016. Of course, when, as you know, many people with a refugee background came to Germany and Berlin especially. Of course, there were refugees coming to TU Berlin even before that time, but they hardly ever showed up at the university, which the reason for this was that before 2015, it was, for most people, it was not allowed to study unless their asylum case was finished. So if they did not receive or haven't received a decision, they were not allowed to study, which is what you can see below. Studium nicht gestattet, that was really written in their passports. So unless you had a you had a clear residence status, you were not allowed to study, which basically meant that many people were kind of stuck in a very well, depressing situation where they couldn't do much because asylum processes take ages in Germany, or took ages. I mean, it's a bit faster now, but it still takes a lot of time, and this not allowing them to study basically led to the fact that many persons just had to wait until something happens and before they could come to the university. This rule was abolished in 2015 in Berlin, and then people started coming to the universities, and there was a lot of demand for guidance also, and for well, getting information on how to enter the university system and how to reconnect to their academic careers. And that's why, of course, people were coming to our offices. And we started to think about, okay, what could we do and what could we offer? Because what we experienced from the very beginning was that there were people who were well-trained, highly motivated, and well-skilled, but didn't have any option to continue their academic careers. First of all, of course, because they didn't have German skills, but also because it was like very difficult to enter the university system in terms of bureaucracy, understanding the system, and so on and so forth. So that was the point basically where we started to think about what could we as a university offer. And there was mainly two things we came up with. Well, the first thing is not very creative, but it's still the most important thing, what we do and what is really, really essential when it comes to working with refugees. It's the academic advising. So that's basically our jobs, that's what we did all the time, of course, but it's the central part of all our activities related to working with refugees until now. So we offer individual advising sessions dealing with questions like access to the university system, admission requirements, application, of course, recognition of degrees and qualification. That plays a big role. Of course, many people are not sure if they can even study in Germany, if their degrees are being recognized, how it works, what they need, what the requirements are. But we also offer advice, of course, regarding choice of studies, like which subjects make sense, what's the equivalence maybe in the German system. We talk with them about financing, housing, residence, like topics which are not directly maybe related to the university, but of course play a big role when it comes to studying. And of course, we are there when it comes to difficulties during studies or exams, personal or psychological challenges. That's also where our colleagues from the psychological counseling come into play. So that's the main thing, what we offer and what we still do, and that's what we will talk about a bit more in detail in a minute. The second thing we came up with was we started to offer a guest student program, which was called, or which is still called, Into TU Berlin, because what we saw was that there were people who had to interrupt their studies, who already had academic experience in the sense that most of them already started studying at the university, that they already had basic knowledge in their fields, and they were now forced to interrupt their academic careers and had no option to be in touch with their subjects anymore. And we wanted to offer something where people could enter the university on a very low level maybe, and without much bureaucracy. Because what we had to tell people in the beginning was always, well, you have to learn German until you reach the C1 level, which is very elaborate German language skills, because all the bachelor's programs are being taught in German at TU Berlin and at most of the German universities, and also most of the master's programs. And then you can come back. So that was basically the situation in the beginning. So we didn't have much to offer because people had to have German skills before they could enter our degree programs, and that's of course kind of frustrating. If you're new in Berlin, you would like to start something now, and then what you hear is, okay, you have to learn German for 1 year, for 2 years, and then come back. So we wanted to offer something where people can stay in touch with their degree programs or with their subjects, and could do something more or less immediately. So the idea was to offer the guest student program. What is it? The guest student program means that you can register as a guest, even though you don't meet all the requirements yet. And guest students can attend courses from the regular degree programs. That means from the bachelor's and from the master's programs. It's not a fixed program in the sense that you get a schedule and you have to attend and complete certain courses. It's a program which is very flexible and where you can choose the courses according to your specific situation, because that's also something we realized very quickly, that it's all individual cases. You can't say that the refugee needs this and that. It's really depending on where people are in their educational careers. So that's why we wanted to offer something which is easy to enter, which is not very bureaucratic, and which is also flexible and can be adapted to the specific situation and needs of people they are in at the moment. So we also don't require any particular language skills. As a guest student, you could just attend courses, just sit there and listen, or you can also attend, take exams and earn credit points at the end if you pass an exam. And if you then later take up regular studies, the credits can be recognized so that you don't have to do the courses again. So that was also special, that we really allowed people to earn official ECTS. And the idea was basically to give people an opportunity to be in touch with the university, to also adapt or readapt to the learning environment here, to understand the German educational system, and then finally make a well-informed choice about their further educational career. And also, of course, get access to TU Berlin's degree programs in the long run. That's also always the aim, that people are able to take up regular studies finally. Yeah. And what is essential even about the guest student program, or also about the guest student program, is that it's really closely linked to academic advising also, so that you don't just register for something and you don't just take any courses and see what happens. It's always connected to academic advising. If you want to register as a guest student, you first come to our office. We discuss what are your options, what do you bring, what do you still need, and what could be a short and long-term perspective for you. And then maybe the guest student program is one thing you do, but maybe also you decide that you first want to learn the language and then come back. So the central thing always is the academic advising. There's many more offerings for refugees at TU Berlin. Just to give you a brief overview, of course, we also offer psychological counseling and support for students with disabilities and chronic illnesses. My colleagues will explain later why this is important. We offer support for scholars at risk. The colleagues from the international office raised a Berlin-Ukraine aid fund last year, and there's more decentralized activities, just to have a complete picture here. But as I said, what we would like to focus on today is the academic advising and why it is important. So what exactly is academic advising? Well, I think, I don't know what your specific backgrounds are, but maybe you're familiar with what it is, because like, at least in Germany, every university has an academic advising service. So what do? We are, first of all, a first contact office for prospective students having questions regarding degree programs, contents and structures of studies, orientation and choice of studies, admission criteria, admission processes, and the organization of studies. So like basically all questions regarding to studying. And of course, we are also there for students who encounter difficulties during their studies or who are unsure if their degree programs are the right thing for them, and for everyone else having questions regarding to studying. What is important maybe to know is that we are not a marketing institution, so we can offer kind of really open and unbiased advising. So we do not have to, or we don't sell our degree programs in a sense. We really offer academic advising, which is there to enable people to make a well-informed choice about their educational careers. So that also means that we, of course, have a good overview, or have the best overview of what happens at TU Berlin and what we offer, but we also have an overview what other options, which alternatives there might be. It basically looks like this. We have an initial information counter where people come to. At the moment, this happens mostly online, but also on campus. And there's staff who talks with people briefly and then decides if he or she needs an individual advising session, and that's basically our main work. What does that mean? We offer independent advising sessions, which are basically independent and in-depth, and of course also confidential consultation to develop, to show and discuss courses of actions and alternatives. And we basically help to evaluate and weigh up these options. And of course, in the end, the decision is with the advice seeker. So of course, we don't make any decisions for anyone. Yeah. Why is this specifically important for refugee students or for students with a refugee background? Well, I think it's obvious, but to really understand why academic advising is essential when you work with refugee students, you have to keep in mind the specific situation refugees find themselves in, or most refugees find themselves in. The first thing is, usually refugee students were not able to prepare for their studies abroad like regular international students, which is also why I don't like to call them international students or migrant students, because from my perspective, it's really not the same. They are really in a specific situation, even though, of course, they share features with regular international students when it comes to recognition, for instance, or admission criteria, but still their living conditions are really special. As a result, most of them lack knowledge of the higher education system because they did not first and foremost come to Germany, for instance, to study at TU Berlin. There were other reasons why they came, and now they would like to take up their studies again, of course. Refugees are mostly facing a lot of bureaucratic hurdles. It starts with the asylum process. It goes on when it comes to application for financial support or the university application. This is really something we encounter a lot. Also in the academic advising, that people are really, really very much focusing on paperwork and on what do I need, is it even possible, and they kind of lose track of what they want and what makes sense for them, because they are really thinking a lot in bureaucratic also constraints, because that's the first thing you are confronted with when you come to Germany. You go to an office, you register, and then the rest is a lot of paperwork and a lot of bureaucracy, and also a lot of legal, financial, social constraints, because maybe you're not able to move freely around the country. Maybe you have to live in a refugee camp and so on and so forth. So you're you're much less free. You are not as free as someone who comes here as an international student and who can maybe apply in Berlin and in Frankfurt, and it doesn't make a big difference where you go at the end. And what we also see in the academic advising is that people face a lot of pressure to achieve successes quickly, be it from their relatives back home who expect them to be successful, be it because they have to support their families financially, and also, of course, because there's a lot of pressure from the authorities. The job center, which is the German unemployment agency, usually wants people to be in employment quickly, and then maybe studying is not the first thing which makes sense in from their perspective. So there's a lot of pressure also, and that usually leads to the idea that you prefer things which are easy to reach and quick, but maybe not always the best option for you. And this is what academic advising basically can do and where we come into play. What is also important to know is that I mentioned before that people lack knowledge of the educational system. This does not necessarily mean that they lack information. That's maybe also something which is important to keep in mind, because what we heard so many times is that, okay, there are refugee students, we have to give them all the information. We need a centralized website. And if we write all the information there, then it's fine. But it's not. Usually it's not. The lack of information is not the biggest hurdle. The biggest hurdle is to put that information into perspective and to really understand what it means, and to understand how the system works and what it means if someone says certain things. So academic advising can help students to prioritize, to classify, and to evaluate their information. So one of the classic things we hear in the academic advising is that people say, okay, they say I have to do Ausbildung. Ausbildung is vocational training, because, well, the job center, of course, finds it quicker and more convenient to do Ausbildung, but it might not make much sense for someone who already almost finished his bachelor's back in his home country. So that's where we come into play. We can help them make independent, well-informed, and realistic decisions about their future academic careers. And we can help them focus on not only what is possible and easy to reach, but also what makes sense in the long run. That's what I meant before when I was talking about bureaucracy and focusing on paperwork and so on and so forth, because, yeah, that's what we can really do to put things into perspective and to also take time and talk about what really makes sense. If you turn that around from the institutional perspective, that's what we also saw when we developed our offerings for refugee students, is that academic advising can help to address and to identify the target group's needs, questions, and problems, and then finally to develop measures that really fit their needs and can be quickly adapted to what they need, because you talk to them all the time, and that's what we really did. So we saw that, okay, now people have better language skills. Maybe we don't need German language classes from the A0 level anymore. Maybe we can have other things to offer, and so on and so forth. So what we really saw that, because we've been in touch with the target group all the time and we've been talking with them, we were able to really quickly adapt also our measures to their needs and if things change there. And we can also help to raise awareness for the target group's needs in the whole institution. That's what maybe also my colleague from the support for students with disabilities and chronic illnesses can explain a bit more in detail later. So, and finally, of course, in the long run, this can help to make the university more inclusive. In the IncluStem project now, we, from our experience, developed a couple of guidelines, what you need and what you should maybe have in mind when you talk with refugee students in the academic advising. First of all, from our experience, it's not that you really need special knowledge in refugee advising, because basically what you do there is you do your job. So you don't do, your job is to explain the university system. And you, of course, are familiar with your university system, so you don't need any specific skills maybe to, or specific knowledge to do academic advising or to offer academic advising for refugee students. Maybe it helps if you have some basic knowledge regarding the asylum system, but this is it's nice to have, it's not necessarily a must. What we of course encounter is that people have a lot of questions which are not within the responsibility maybe of the university directly, like housing, financing, moving to another city and things like that. So it really helps if you have a basic overview of what happens there and what the legislation is maybe, but you don't, from my experience, you don't really need extra specific skills to talk with refugees. And that's why what we found also when we talked with our colleagues in Spain and in Sweden is that it's more maybe an understanding of the situation people are in, and maybe a way of thinking and a way of approaching that topic. So our first guideline would be that you, as an academic advisor, should see advice seekers as what they are, namely members of the academic community. So maybe it makes sense to not focus that much on the refugee status of their, well, features as a refugee, but maybe to really more see them as people who already have academic experience. And that's what really the majority of people we talk with are. They bring a lot and they know a lot already. They might only need the German skills, for instance, or the Spanish skills or whatever to enter the university system. Or maybe they don't have all the documents they need, but they already have a lot of experience and they are members of the academic community. And that was also the main idea of our guest student program, that we enable them to be in touch with their subjects and that they can talk with the electrical engineering department, for instance, because they're electrical engineers. We also encountered that language, at least in the academic advising, is not that important. In the beginning, we were thinking a lot about, do we need interpreters? What about translation? And we saw that in the academic advising, it was not that much relevant, because if someone only brings like very basic German skills, maybe you discuss also very basic things with them and they will come again. That's also something which happens often, that people don't come like once and then everything is clear and they start. Maybe they come 5 or 10 times. But we realized that language is not the most important thing. What is important though is that you as an academic advisor should be able to also put your standpoint into perspective. That means you are, of course, expert in your university system of your country, and therefore maybe we or you tend to take things for granted, which might not be so obvious for students who are not familiar with the system. So it's really important to keep that in mind and to put maybe also the information into small portions and to give people time to think about all the things thoroughly. And also what is also important is to take their motivations maybe seriously and to reflect also your own backgrounds and standpoints a lot when you talk with refugees. And what we also really found important, that's what I mentioned 3 times already, is that we as academic advisors should focus on also giving bureaucracy a break at some point. Because as I said, often students are really overwhelmed with bureaucracy when they come here. In German, it's like Ausweis and Termine. That's the first words you learn, like ID card and appointments. And then maybe you really lose track sometimes of what makes sense and what is important, and also to develop a long-term perspective when it comes to your educational careers and your plans. And finally, what is also important, you should build a network within your institution and beyond. That's what I mentioned already when it comes to people having questions regarding many things outside the university, like financing, housing, and so on and so forth. So it really helps if you work together in your university with the admissions office or with the preparatory school, for instance, but also outside the university to really establish contacts with institutions supporting refugees with the social and the financial questions. Yeah, I actually wanted to illustrate that with showing you some success stories of what exactly happens at TU Berlin and what we did and people we met and who were successful in completing their studies at our institution. But now it's already half an hour, so I will skip that maybe, and maybe we can take that up in the discussion later, and I can show you some of the stories, because then maybe it becomes even clearer. I think that was like very theoretical now. Maybe in the end, if we have time, I would really love to show you some of our role models, some of the people who were successful in studying at TU Berlin and who started their careers here in Germany, because then maybe it's easier to understand what I mean when I say these things. But for now, maybe I would like to give the word first to Juliane and then to my colleagues from the psychological counseling.
Yeah, thank you, Katharina. It was really interesting to hear the presentation, and I'm also looking forward, maybe if we have time later on, to hear a little bit more about the cases that you just mentioned.